So who is Satoshi Nakamoto, and what was he trying to build when he created Bitcoin? By the end of this educational series, you will find out. But first of all, in my original invitation to this channel, I stated that we needed to look first at the predicament of the most vulnerable people among us. So who exactly are we talking about? Unfortunately, in order to answer that, we're going to have to expose some extremely humiliating human circumstances, so be prepared. You might be surprised that a discussion regarding Bitcoin and cryptocurrency has to start by talking about those that live in a state of forced servitude throughout the world. Most of us are not particularly eager to examine whether forced servitude is a real problem these days. It's unpleasant and uncomfortable to think about. People generally believe they would never permit themselves to be subject to anyone else's demands without proper compensation or treatment. And so a common natural assumption is that anyone who chooses to allow themselves to be exploited in any way simply has the choice to walk away. We should all be able to rest at ease since slavery is, in fact, technically illegal in every country of the world. But what is happening in some of these images? What are we looking at? Clearly, this is recently filmed high-definition footage. These are modern times. If slavery is illegal everywhere, then why does it seem that some people are still being forced to do things that they don't really want to do, things that are dangerous? These things are being performed for very little compensation. And also, as you look at some of these images, to what degree are children the ones being exploited? Something doesn't seem right, does it? Make no mistake, what we are talking about right now is just a discussion of where the vulnerabilities are in our current world. I'm going to show you how this affects all of us financially. These things must be understood before we can move forward in answering some of the questions as to where our currencies are headed. You might be tempted to dismiss these questions as someone else's problem. Some people have argued that the people in these images don't deserve any better because surely they must have just decided to tolerate the governments that allow these kinds of conditions to occur. It's as if the civilized world is subconsciously saying, these people need to just stand up for themselves somehow and refuse to participate in such an existence. Or perhaps we can just think of the images we are seeing as just extreme and truly uncommon, and like other kinds of propaganda out there, this discussion is probably just designed to convince you to donate money to some cause. If this is what you think, I promise there won't be even so much as a footnote during or at the end of this series that will ask you to contribute any money to anyone or any organization, so please hear me out. This is an informational and educational exercise only, but it's also a warning. You will discover that all of this is far more relevant to you than you might imagine. Remember how intertwined we are all becoming? Well, if that is true, and that interconnectedness continues to grow with the same speed and pattern that it has for many years, you are going to need to understand some things that are inevitably going to occur as a result. So you might be tempted to feel that since this stuff isn't something you encounter in your life personally, that it doesn't really matter if it's happening or not. Look, regardless what you might currently be willing to believe, it has been estimated that there are over 40 million actual slaves worldwide. And this is unfortunately only a very conservative estimate. There are likely more than several 100 million people out there that if you could trade places with any one of them, you would most definitely categorize yourself as enslaved, at least by some definition or another. The point is, slavery still impacts all of us whether we realize it or not, and especially in this increasingly interconnected world. The fact is, if you are not a slave, then you undoubtedly have slaves working for you somewhere, somehow. If you doubt this, you can even get online and assess this for yourself. We have included a link in the description where you can see it with your own eyes. Don't just trust what I'm saying. In the link provided, the organization that created this well-respected assessment tool have done a heroic job illustrating where some of the ordinary products you use are coming from. You will probably be shocked if you take a good, honest look at this. What you will find is many of the normal everyday items you buy are provided to you in some form or another through a supply chain significantly driven by slave labor. Now, you might be tempted to dismiss this argument or even scoff at this idea, but please give me the opportunity to open your eyes. None of this is conjecture. Everything I am saying here is real, and I can prove it. Satoshi Nakamoto, the inventor of Bitcoin, created it primarily to combat abuse and tyranny. He was very aware that the open source Bitcoin protocol would be incredibly disruptive and damaging to world financial power, so he has never been willing to reveal himself. He remains anonymous. He knew that some of the primary forces used to terrorize underprivileged people have been asset confiscation and currency manipulation. This was the seminal reason why he was so intent on creating a fully peer-to-peer protocol that could allow people everywhere to free themselves from the insidious bondage and tyranny of sovereign money. In the next segment of this video series, I am going to start to show you how cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin are changing things, and specifically how the slavery issue will come to bear on the ongoing cryptocurrency revolution. What I am talking about is a game-changing system that will allow the most vulnerable people out there to rise up against oppression in a massive surge. This is their opportunity that prior to this new technology never seemed probable or even possible. But before we do that, you have some very important homework to do. You need to click the link below and find out how many slaves work for you right now. You're going to have a lot of questions after you do it, and I will attempt to answer some of them in the next segment. I am going to show you how the prison doors are about to be blown open by this new technology called cryptocurrency.